definition of a client winter is when you're having a period of time where there's no client in sight. There's some tumbleweeds. It's a bit stressful.
Cold.
Things aren't working anymore. It's just all gone a bit quiet. How do we actually get through that?
So I'm going to be asking Cordelia questions about that because she is the wizard, in all honesty. Cordelia is astounding at turning a client winter around. We're quite lucky we don't have client winters. Well, I think the big thing that we've had with Rebellious is it's an influx and then a quiet. And I think even if you're only working with one or two clients at a time, or not very many, you're probably familiar with that feeling, right? The sort of
Feast
inconsistency. Feast and famine, yeah.
But that is I would say that's a bit more of an advanced problem, because at that point you know that you need to put systems in place to prevent the feast and famine, and we have done that, and we've got systems in place to create that. That support in between those moments is always going to be a little bit like that, but it's about how do you create either recurring revenue or systems and have them in place to support you in the lulls, so that when that does happen, it doesn't you don't notice it, you don't feel it as much. So I would say that's a bit of a later down the line problem, but I do feel that a lot of coaches and a lot of mentors and a lot of people in service-based space, especially when organically promoting their services, not using Facebook ads, not having a big kind of system or machine in place, it's very natural to experience that feast and famine for sure.
So the client winter is more just a vast, lonely landscape, a frosty lake. It's a famine. Okay. Yeah, it's a famine. Well, Cordelia is a flipping genius at getting through a famine. And I mean that in both ways. She's a fabulous cook as well. But in terms of getting clients, yeah, genius. I kind of want to also draw attention to one thing, which was that we have different skill sets in terms of, I work with messaging and how the way you communicate what you're trying to say, or what the value, communicating your value, I would say, is more what it is if I break it down. And I call that messaging strategy. And I talk about it broadly as strategy. And then Cordelia refers to marketing as marketing strategy. So we had this little bit of I do strategy. No, I do strategy. We kind of didn't necessarily understand where we sort of met. And I think that's a really important thing to bring up, because while I go around the houses, I think marketing in itself, it is quite big. It's hard it's not like the easiest thing to conceptualize and understand. So I want to start with, in your specialism, in your expertise, what is marketing for you specifically, not broadly?
It is building relationships with people, demonstrating to them what it is that you do, how you can help them, and solving that problem. But just take a step back. Actually, I can just water it down to one thing. Marketing is just building relationships with people, with the right people. And that is the thing that is the most important, that a lot of people miss. It's like, oh, marketing is selling. No, it's not. Marketing is starting that process by building relationships with people. I mean, for instance, I'll give you an example. And I have bought it, but there was an advert for a nail set that you can make at home. I can't remember.
Which one is it?
Sister Co.
What's it do?
It basically, is
it the powder or is it the gel?
It's not the dip.
Okay.
It's basically, it is a powder, but it's different from the plastic dip ones. But anyway,
okay.
I was looking at this ad, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And it was this woman explaining how it works while she's doing her own hands. And it was a great ad. It was really personable. You really kind of got a sense of who she was and what she was about. And I didn't buy the thing, but I watched it and I was interested. And I sent the link to Jennifer, because Jennifer loves a good set of nails. And she didn't watch it, but that's by the by. But the point is that, I kept looking at it, and I kept sort of going back and looking at it. Eventually I went and bought a set, right? And it's coming tomorrow, I hope. And me and the kids are going to have amazing nails tomorrow night. But the point is that was a relationship that was built between me and a product over the space of 48 hours. Okay. First, there was a human person that I related to and that I built a connection to by watching her video. But then I built a relationship with the product itself. So it's not about just like, having a flash sale and getting it out there. It's about building trust. It's about demonstrating what it is that you do. And it's about expanding your reach. Now, their marketing's quite aggressive. I mean, you sign up to their email list, you get an email an hour. I'm not even lying. I mean, I thought we were bad, but that is nuts. But it just those touch points, it just enables you to create that and build that relationship. But it begins with, there has to be some kind of touch point, right? There has to be something that begins that. And marketing, if we boil it all down and we just make it really simple, it is building a relationship, either between your customer and your physical product, or between you and your customer. And, even if these people don't become your customers, they may become your broadcasters, people that talk about it. I mean, I've showed those nails to my mum, I've showed them to Jennifer before I'd even bought them, right? So I was like,
didn't show them to me.
Didn't show them to you. No, I didn't actually. We've been busy with other things.
We have been busy. So here's a question for you. In your and what I want to do as well is dial it in specifically to service-based business owners, not as general business owners. So we're talking about web designers or coaches or
mentors,
consultants, trainers. What we get a lot of PAs as well, a lot of personal assistants, coaches, and so working for clients as a solo trader, right? So this person obviously has a skill, obviously has confidence in their ability to deliver. Can they get through a client winter without marketing?
No.
Oh, that's bold.
It is bold, but that's like saying, can you get through a client winter whilst sitting in a dark room with the windows closed, not making eye contact or physical contact or telephone contact or internet contact with another human being? No, because marketing is just building relationships and it's starting conversations. If you're not doing that, if you're not having conversations, if you're not connecting with people, then you're not going to make a difference. So having said that, there are hundreds of different types of marketing. Marketing isn't just a Facebook ad. Marketing is a client referring someone to you. It's you having a conversation in a networking event or a coffee shop. It's the website that sits there passively attracting people through SEO. It is the blogs that you put out 3 months ago that are getting new readers looking at it. It's the posts that you put out on social media. It's the way you show up in Facebook groups. It's the DMs that you're sending. It's the conversations that you're having. It's the connection that you're making now, but also that you've made months ago that's still serving you now. So no, you can't operate a business without any of that. It's impossible.
Okay, cool. So the reason I asked that and started with like the marketing side of things first was because I think the people we attract, they're not looking to learn marketing skills because we have the network. So we attract people that are networking, and you go networking because you want clients mostly. I think you also want to have connection as well, because it's lonely being a solopreneur. But like realistically, the best outcome you could have is an abundance of clients from networking, and that is hard pressed to make that happen, especially if you're not actively marketing within the
but the problem,
networking.
It can happen, and it does happen. And for instance, one of my clients she goes networking and she's absolutely incredible. She's in front of someone, they'll become a client of hers. She's absolutely awesome at what she does. She doesn't have any sort of systems for making that happen, because my brain goes faster than my mouth. It's difficult. She didn't have any marketing systems in place for getting people into her world on a repeat basis. And so what that meant was she was kind of reliant on what happened at a networking event and also word of mouth, which were both very fruitful for her, but they're not elements that she can easily manipulate or control to dial things up when there's a client winter. And that is the problem. It's not that they're ineffective or you're hard pressed to find clients. It's that you're not going to be able to dial that up, and because you're not in control of it, right? You're not in control of who's going to turn up to a networking event, and you're not in control of who's going to talk about you to the right person at the right time when they do. It just happens. And those things are great, but we also need more sustenance in place.
So more elements of, well, I guess it's expanding your reach more. Right, because if you're one person going to a networking event, you are the one person marketing you. If you have flyers, you've then got 100 flyers marketing you. Not that they're going to necessarily be the most effective, but that's just an example of like you and 100 flyers is more effective than just you. So there's like levels to it. I think marketing is a scary term for businesses that are like lone rangers, sole traders out there, service-based business owners, because they are providing a service because that is what they're good at. Like that's what they want to do. That's what they finessed. That's what they've decided to do. When you start getting into marketing, that's more business. Like it's more operations. It's more like I think it's just a bit of a scary term. And I think we don't typically say marketing all that much in our content. Because
you try and prevent it because of that. It is absolutely true that
because
it can be a bit of a scary term.
It puts people off. But I guess what is really important is that marketing does apply.
I think we can just redefine marketing real quick. Like if anybody's listening to this or watching this that feels like, well, someone just dropped in the chat here, marketing feels like you are selling yourself, and there's stigmas around people selling themselves. Absolutely. One thing I know about a lot of our audience is that they are people who love people, and they're doing what they do because they want to help people. And then the idea of getting into marketing and selling what they do feels really icky, because that's not the reason why they're doing what they're doing, or they don't want it to become about the money, or they don't want to be that cheesy, sleazy sales guy that's hammering your DMs with sales patter. And that is because we have a connotation with sales and marketing that is dehumanizing. So we take the human out of marketing. And look, I spoke to someone the other day. They were like, oh, I really need to learn marketing. I'm going to buy a Google course on how to market. And I was thinking to myself, that's the worst thing you could possibly do, because you're going to learn, if you learn generic marketing, yes, you will probably learn some dehumanizing stuff, because even the terminology, a lead, from cold to sold, a lot of the terminology that we use in marketing itself is very dehumanizing. And that is one thing that I am majorly passionate about, is putting the human back into business. And it's not like this is happening across the world anyway. I see so many people talking about this. It's so true. It doesn't matter if you're selling to a business. It doesn't matter if you're selling to a human. At the end of the day, you are always selling to a human. And we want to make it human-centered, human-focused. And actually, I promise you, it works so much better when it is. So why would you dehumanize it? And I reckon it feels icky because actually it's not right. Like it doesn't feel like it's in alignment, because it actually isn't right. And there's a lower conversion rate on the stuff that isn't human connection focused. So marketing, let's just rephrase it right now. The purpose of marketing is building relationships. And so marketing is just connecting. It's just connecting with people. Now, if you imagine that marketing is now connecting, how does that feel? Does that feel better? Do you feel scared of connecting with other people? Maybe you do. Maybe that is scary, but does that feel lighter? Because that's literally all you need to do. You've just got to get out and start connecting with people. And you can do this one-on-one. And you can do this passively to hundreds of people through a video ad or a YouTube video, a YouTube channel that you're building and getting lots and lots of views and hits and things. But essentially, at the end of the day, you're always talking to one person in that video. Like right now, I'm talking to one person, you. I'm talking to one person. The person who's listening to this, I'm talking to you, and I've got one person in my head. And so it's always about connecting with other people. I hope that makes sense. So purpose of marketing is building relationships. Let's rename marketing to connecting. And unfortunately, connecting is such a widely used word that without the context, you wouldn't get it. But with the context, it makes sense, right?
Right. Well, I love that. I think that's really nice to like boil it down to connecting, because basically it's connecting people with your product in whatever form. If we're talking about in business wise, specifically service-based businesses, just connect people with your products. And that doesn't mean it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be big. You don't need a Google course. You don't need to do the thing that big businesses are doing. So with that in mind, we kind of have established marketing is essential to get through a client winter, and it's not as big and scary as you think, or that our audience specifically might have reservations about marketing. So let's get into the 5 tips to survive a client winter, because we took on a little tangent. And I think that was important because we do talk about marketing a lot. We just don't talk about it a lot because of what we've discussed in this episode. So I'm going to stop saying Right. So step 1.
I cut like 600 ums out of a video the other day. It was like insane amount of umming going on.
Oh, we're working on it.
Yeah.
Okay. That was close. It was a close one. So step 1. What's your first tip to get through a client winter?
Mindset. It is all about how you're viewing yourself in that winter. I have no idea where I got it from, but I have an unwavering amount of self-belief. God knows, I don't know where it came from. If I tried to tell you the formula of getting some, I wouldn't necessarily know. But I think that when things are kind of going a little bit south or a little bit wayward, and you don't know what it is that's causing it, let's say that you've had, clients booking calls with you, or you've had loads of sales calls coming in, or you've been great, and then you're having this lull and you can't figure out why. The first thing is to know that it isn't because of you. And that is really, really important, because I feel many people give up at that point. They give up at the point where things just aren't working and they can't figure out what it is. So the first thing is mindset. It's having that self-belief. It's knowing that you are a scientist right now and you're trying to figure out what the formula is. You've got this piece and they're not fitting together. Or you've got, those games where you've got like pipes and you've got to fit the pipes together so the water can flow through. Or you're trying to find that vein of gold. Whichever analogy fits you best, take your pick. The point is that you're trying to solve a problem as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a solopreneur, as a whatever it is that you like to refer to yourself as. You are a problem solver. That's it. You're solving problems. And this is a problem that you need to solve. So we just need to go, right, okay, that's not working. And you can see the fire burning, and maybe you can hear the bill callers knocking, but you've got to stay focused. You've got to keep that self-belief. No, it's not you, and just try to figure out what it is that isn't working, because there will be a solution. It's not you. It's either your strategy, your physical methodic strategy has got holes in it, or it's got gaps in it, or you've changed something, or your message isn't connecting. You just got to figure out what it is, essentially. But that's really key, is keeping yourself in check, because if you don't, and if you let your self-belief start to slide, you'll take the whole thing down with you.
I think that's really lovely. That in itself could be a whole episode. So I'm resisting the urge to get really deep into that, because we definitely could. Summary: you're going to face inconsistencies. Your every attempt you make is not going to work. But you are one attempt away from making it work. So giving up before you've really put everything into it is not going to serve you. Have confidence and solid mindset in your ability to serve, and make it your duty to keep going. Otherwise, well, yeah, that is it. That is essential.
As Alex Hormozy says, don't make me niche slap you, which is that,
yes.
I think, just in relation to this mindset piece, it can be very easy to go into panic mode. And one of the first things that people do is they decide they've got to change the whole business. I'm in the wrong niche. Or as, niche slap works because they say niche, but we say niche. Doesn't really, niche slap doesn't really work. But I'm in the wrong niche.
I didn't even pick that up.
I need to change direction. Dear. I need to, and it just doesn't mean that you need to change your entire business at all. Often just the slightest tweak, the slightest change can make a huge difference. But we'll talk about that in a minute, I'm sure.
Okay, we finished one. Mindset.
Number 2 is definitely, leading on from that, needs to be about testing different things. Now, the first thing you don't want to do is change too much. In fact, maybe things aren't working in the way that they had before, if you had things working and then they've stopped, you might have made too many changes. It's very, very difficult to just sit still and leave things alone, right? I've done this before. I've launched about, maybe about 10 different programs, and we're back to the original one. That is not the original one, the third one in. I'm back to that. After having closed it down, I've come back to it because it worked. The message was great. It worked really well. I launched something else. The worst thing you can do is keep changing things. Now, look, I was told this by one of my mentors, Cordelia, the easiest bit is going from 0 to 6 figures, because you get to throw a load of shit at the wall and see what sticks. You get to try a lot of different things. You get to play about, and it's really fun. The hard part is going from 6 to 7 figures, because you just got to keep doing the same thing that worked over and over again, and it gets boring and you're going to get bored. So keep changing one thing or add one new little thing in every year, but don't go wild. Meh, what does he know? I've got this idea and that idea and this idea and that idea. And I launched so much in the last 4 years. Like, it is crazy how much stuff I've launched. But actually, a lot of it is down to testing different things and trying different things. And I really feel like we've got an incredible formula now that works really well and will be the thing that we get bored of because we have to do it over and over again. But the thing is that if you change things, you have to be able to measure the results. If you aimlessly change things all the time, then how do you know what your results are a result of? Because you could change your messaging, and you could try a different launch strategy, and you could do a different pricing strategy, and you could write different emails. You've got too many different things going on, and it bombs, and you don't know what it's attributed to. So we want to test things. We want to test different strategies or different messaging, but we do it one by one, bit by bit, and we see what difference that makes. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to have a kind of buffer financially, and to not have your back entirely up against the wall where you can feel the fire burning your eyes. Because if it is that hot in the kitchen, it's going to be very difficult to focus, because you're going to get into panic mode, panic stations. So I think little sneaky tip in there, added in to the mix,
tip
is
2.1.
Always put away for a rainy day. Plan for a client winter. It may come sometime. And if you've got a bit of a buffer, you're going to be calm, you're going to be collected, you're going to be able to test things, and you're not affected. It's just going to be really a lot more comfortable.
I feel like that's just not ridiculous, but it's a very important tip, which you will never do, because that is not what you do in the first. It's like business is just about like spending money, being poor for a month, then being abundantly rich for 2 months, and then being like, I need to put this money away. But you just, when it's sunny, you don't know, you feel like it's going to be sunny forever. There's actually a principle.
That is true.
You think it's going to be sunny forever, you buy ridiculous things, and then you go, oh Lord, it's now client winter, and I am tied into some subscriptions that are ridiculously expensive and aren't helping me out at all for a year. Okay. So I think even though that's a really important tip, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But there's a really good point that you make, which was don't keep changing things. But what I thought was really interesting about that is like you love trying out new things, testing new things, and that is interesting. That's what got you to 6 figures, because you got to throw loads of things at the wall and something worked. But what got you here is not going to get you there. Like that's a lovely saying. So I mean, that's along the line somewhere, but essentially, well, should we say, do try lots of things if you're getting to 0 to 6 figures, or
no, we want to test things, but we want to be smart about it. Test things and be able to measure them. Okay. So let's say, for instance, you've been running a webinar and now no one's signing up for it. And this is actually bleeds into my next thing I want to talk about, which is keep your ears to the ground and talk to people and do some market research. And have a think about, what's changed? Like, what is changed is, if my message is exactly the same, has there been a societal change? right? And we had this. I'm not going to lie. Like, we had this. When I launched Rebellious Business, we were in lockdown. We were in COVID period. My messaging was all about that. It was about how to pivot a business in a pandemic. It was about how to run an online business because we can't go out. I mean, I was looking at one of my old emails the other day, I wanted to repurpose. I was like, well, I can't because it's talking about lockdown and it's completely irrelevant. So we do have to pivot. And so, yeah, we want to test things, but we want to be able to measure the results of each test. It's like if you're going to split test something, you have the results of A and the results of B, and then you can see which one performed better. But if you're just going to be a mad headless chicken and you're just going to change a load of shit and hope for the best, you're not going to know what's got you the results. So testing things so that you can measure them. But then the next part of that is keep your ear to the ground. What's going on societally? Now, one thing that we've had in 2023 that was a big part of 2023 was the cost of living crisis. Every man and his dog knew about it subconsciously, if not consciously, because it's something that's been talked about at the co-op, at the supermarket, at the pub, on the news, in the newspapers, in the magazines, on webinars, on Facebook, on anywhere you look, there's someone bleating on about the cost of living crisis. And what that does is it creates a subconscious thing that, oh, we're in a crisis. We need to be careful, And so that, for instance, is something, okay, if that's going on, maybe that could be having an impact. What do I need to pivot or change or test or try? That meets people where they're at. So keeping your ear to the ground by keeping in the know about what's happening, but also listening to people, talking to people, having conversations with people, either in the DM inbox, either by, jumping on, having calls, or gold standard, doing some market research interviews where you're actually jumping on and finding out from people where they're at, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they need, what's going on for them right now. And it will keep you current. Maybe your message has got a bit outdated. Maybe you're still trying to sell things to people that have got COVID and they don't anymore. And just like, do you know what I mean? So that is super, super important.
Yeah. And also pay attention to seasonal trends. That's really big. Things change on a week-to-week basis. You've got like Wimbledon happening in the summer, and not necessarily, if you're a tennis coach, that's very relevant. There's going to be things for you that are relevant to draw on throughout the entire year, and you're going to have things that you can do every year, which is great. If you create promotions, or if you create strategies around events that happen on an annual basis, then next year you've got a whole list of things to put out, repeatable things. So keeping your ears to the ground for societal changes, but also consider things that are reliable, that happen regularly, and over. If you span out enough, a lot of things are pretty reliable. A lot of things happen reliably. The markets go up, markets go down. Trends burst, they die. Like, there are so many reliable big things that happen in a 10-year period, but like when you're in the microscope of it, you feel very much like this is a big brand new thing, but you can draw on things. And anyway, it
doesn't need to be a societal change, but it's just like what exactly, it can be very seasonal, very temporary. Like, one of the things that I hear people say a lot is like, oh, people don't buy stuff when it's Christmas, I'm going to launch in January, or I'm going to, and making assumptions. Be careful about the assumptions that you're making as well. You want these to be facts. You want to know where people are at. Oh, we had a very healthy December. In fact, our December was healthier than November. So is it fair to say that December we should just all pack up and go home? Absolutely not. Because if I were to then believe that, then my actions would be a mirror of my beliefs. And, we wouldn't have had such a fruitful and prosperous December because of that one single belief. So it's more about really keeping your ear to the ground in the sense that you just know what's going on around you. You're not blinded by your own assumptions, your own beliefs, your own thoughts. You're actually listening into what people need, what people are thinking, what's going on societally, but also what's going on seasonally, what's happening around you, because that will give you, remember, your business only exists. And maybe this isn't why you started it, but it does actually only exist on paper because it's solving someone else's problem. So if they currently don't have the problem in the same lens that you're trying to solve it, or you just need to change the lens, right? You've got to figure out what it is that they need. And so, yeah.
I think that speaks to adaptation.
Yeah.
And the right adaptation, because on one frame, don't keep changing your product is your product, your service is your service. And this is really important on a messaging standpoint. And I rack my brains and pull my hair out sometimes, because I'll be working with someone and they'll say, I'm going to change my message. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. And it'll always boil down to the fact that they're still offering the same value. It's just that they are now talking to a different issue or a different problem. It's like the problems that your product solves can adapt, but ultimately the value you provide should be consistent and stable and stay the same. So adapt appropriately. And also, if you feel like you're jumping around and changing everything, interesting with jumping between points, but if you feel like you're changing lots of things, find out what the constant is, and then once you've got the constant, the stable thing, then you go, okay, how does this apply to everything that's going on around me? How does this apply to? So it's more about application and adaptation, but you have to have that stability first. You have to really know exactly what value it's not necessarily problem solving, because that the problems change all the year round. It's the value you provide. The value you provide should be consistent and stable. And it's kind of like the rock and the center point. And then you adapt it to different problems. So immediacy is a problem. Like someone might need to have something right away. That will be in your messaging. Like maybe a new trend happens. I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but it requires for immediate website changes. Okay, so for instance, what was it when all the privacy stuff came out? So yeah, GDPR as an example. That if you are a web developer, all of a sudden there's this big change in the market because privacy laws are changed. So all of your clients will need a new service. The value you're offering is still the same. You're still a web developer, or I can't even figure out who does that. I'm not that good at tech. But ultimately there's a trend happening. So you now adapt the way you position yourself to that trend. But you're still offering the same value. You are still someone with a skill set that has not changed. It's just the way you connect to them is adapting. So it's a bit of a developmental thing when you go through these steps. One is really get dived into your substance and don't waver on that. The substance you offer, the value you offer, should stay consistent. How you apply that to the world, it will change, because the world doesn't stand still for anyone. Well, even if you think let's say mindset coaching, that can really be affected by seasonal things or what's going on in the market, right? Mindset would have been a massive thing to do with finances this year. People will be having a lot of financial concerns this year. So if you're a mindset coach, you need to you don't have to be a financial coach to now help people with finances. You don't have to change your product. You're a mindset coach, but a message or a thing that could connect at this particular time is the fact that there's a cost of living crisis. And there's an interesting challenge to overcome, because if there's a cost of living crisis, people are a bit scared to part with their money, which requires some actual substance. You have to be good at what you do to help people overcome that, and not, there's that sort of conflict there. But that's just an example. You don't have to change your business because now there's a cost of living crisis. You change the way you connect the value of your business to someone, and that keeping that ear to the ground. It doesn't mean you have to change what you do. It just means that you change how you connect.
Definitely. Yeah, I 100% agree. And there are loads of things that can happen as well that one that I kind of predict, but it may not happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does, is if over time there becomes societally quite a negative connotation with the word coaching, because there are people that are doing it badly. It is not regulated. The news has only got to start picking up stories about that and start, spreading it around. And then all of a sudden people are scaremongering about, fake coaches that aren't actually good at what they do and blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden, no man and his dog likes blooming coaches. And look, here's the thing. That is a scary thought, because we've obviously got a lot of coaches, and there's a lot of coaches that are amazing at what they do. But in that instance, what you would do is you wouldn't pack up shop and go, I'm going back to work. You just find a way to support yourself through that period. Number one, you make sure you become accredited. Number two, you perhaps, go a different angle or a different way into explaining what it is that you do. It might be that it's the term life coach that gets the negative connotation, right? And this is like probably in itself going to create a lot of fear in people because we've got a lot of coaches here. But this is the kind of thing that you need to be aware of and prepared for, and okay with pivoting in and being detached, in the sense that you're not emotionally attached to like, oh my God, that means like my life's now over. It's like, okay, we can calmly, in a detached way, go, cool, we've got a problem here. How is it that we solve this problem? What is it that we need to change? What is it that we need to do? What is it that we need to test? Who do we need to speak to, in order to make that pivot? And there's been numerous pivots that I've seen happen. One that comes to mind is Katie Needle. Katie Needle was a brand photographer, but when she first joined the Rebellious Business Network, in her own words, she was a jobbing photographer. She used to photograph anything and everything if she would get paid for it. Now, look, here's the thing. Suddenly, got COVID. She can't go out anymore. So she had to pivot, and she became a branding expert. She started teaching people how to do DIY photo shoots. And, you saw a lot of photographers pivot in that time. But this is where it's like, if you're emotionally attached and you're taking it personally and you're catastrophizing about it, you're not going to be able to see the wood for the trees. Being able to detach and go, right, we have a problem. How can we put this puzzle piece in the right place to kind of make things work? And really and truly, step one is having the mindset so that you can do that. Step two is having the mental and physical ability to be able to test things and be able to measure the results of those tests. And then, number three, if you keep your ears to the ground, if you talk to people, if you listen to what people's needs are, what people's fears are, what people's desires are, then you're going to better be able to connect with people in the current situation, in the current circumstance. And there are loads more stories like Katie, but obviously that period was a big pivot period for a lot of people. And a lot of people did it very successfully.
Yeah, well, the other thing I want to sort of jump on, I know we have a lot of coaches, and something that I'm also aware of, which we talked on, is that the climate for coaches might be shifting because of a lot of negative connotations. Something I would really encourage, if anyone's watching, and we should really do an episode on this, actually, that would be really important, is understanding why that's happening, because you can pivot to counteract that, which makes you stronger. So as an example, I think a lot of the reason that coaches are getting a bad reputation is because it seemed like a get rich quick opportunity. People are just going, I'm a coach. You don't have to technically do anything to be a coach. You could just claim I'm a coach. The problem is that people, when we had like a stronger economy, investing in coaches and then not getting any benefits from it. So then it creates this sort of bubble, and it creates a lot of business that's not substantiated. So regardless of you getting, an accreditation is going to help, but regardless of you getting that, the suspicion still exists. It's a suspicion in substance. So what that means is, if you are a coach, the way to combat that is to demonstrate substance. My big thing, I kind of foresaw this a few years back, because I was working with coaches at the inception stages, and I was like, you're not telling me what you're doing. I was working with coaches as a messaging expert, and I was like, I can see that this cannot sustain itself because no one's telling me what they're doing. And I can see people making sales, and I'm like, it's a bit of fluff. So my big thing was, I wouldn't work with you unless you could literally tell me what it is that you did. I was very specific about that, because I was like, I don't want to be the person with the reputation of selling snake oil. And that's how I developed my whole brand, because I was like, I want people to demonstrate their substance. Because okay, it might not be the most sexy thing to talk about your features or, the actual substance of your product. Everyone wants to talk about benefits. But I was like, these benefits are not going to transpire. They're not going to show up because there's no substance backing it up. So I'm not worried now that coaches are getting a bad reputation, because I know that my substance is concrete and solid, and I've proven it. And I also know how part of my value was to help coaches substantiate themselves. So I know that in this climate, that's going to be super valuable, right? So if you think about the changes in things, and you think why that's happening, you can then position yourself against it and actually succeed out of it. What's really interesting about market forces is that when we're in a down market, few people get very successful, really, really successful. And that's the ones that have done the work, have put in the groundwork, and are sticking with what they do. They don't give up easily. They don't yield easily, and they offer real value, but they become super successful. It's like so there's a period everyone gets successful, everyone gets rich because we're in a booming economy, money's flowing. When money is tight, there is a very smaller section that gets successful. So you want to go, how do I become that? And that means you have to move against what's happening anyway. So this is a whole different thing.
It's definitely a big topic and a good one for us to cover at some point.
Definitely. I'm getting super into it.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify, I wouldn't say coaches are getting a bad reputation. It's the coaching industry is the term I would use. And
yes,
we're seeing a bit of it, but it's not here, but it may come with force at some point soon, because all it takes is for the media to get hold of a story and start talking about it, and it to become a viral topic in society. That is literally all it takes. And it could happen. I remember when I was first going into my first online business, and one of the things that I'd done all this research, what was the product that I was going to sell? It was physical product, e-commerce business. I'd done all this research, and the product we had decided to sell was a hoverboard, right? So the hoverboards are en route from China. I'd ordered them from a really reputable company. It was the same manufacturer that created the IO Hawk hoverboard, which was like the best one on the market. It was basically the same without the IO Hawk branding. It's en route, it's on the boat, it's on its way. Boom. Stories hit the news. There were hoverboards blowing up in people's houses all over England, all over the British Isles, I mean. And now they've got this connotation of being dangerous. No one's buying them anymore. You're not going to buy your kid a hoverboard that's probably going to blow it up. It's like becomes this dangerous thing. It's like, oh yeah, you got to be careful of those. And so I now have these things, and I'm like, well, I can't actually physically sell them, because what if they become the thing that causes someone harm? So we got rid of them. But that was a lot of research. Now, what happened in that moment wasn't that we went, oh, well, that was that. I give up, go back to work. It was just a pivot needed. Right, that doesn't work. We're going to have to focus on something else. So I went back to the drawing board and picked a different product. A couple of months later, we're selling those instead. So it was just an example of how things can go wrong, but it's just about having the mindset to just shift and pivot and try something different and keep going. It's the only way.
That's a really good example. I actually want to write a reminder to write and post about that. I'm always getting ideas, guys. Now, we were supposed to do 5 tips. Interestingly, I did say, I was like, I wonder if it's actually only 3 tips. And I think we might remember that in future. We get right into the nitty gritty of our tips. We don't have time to do the other 2 unless you can allude to them. And then we can do some follow-up. We could do a follow-up, little cheeky exposure on the last 2 tips.
The other two were, number 1, who do you know that needs what you do and that should be working with you? Who have you got in your network that you've had a call with before, but it was the wrong time? Or they've shown some interest in a product, but they haven't bought yet. Make a list of all of those people and just reach out and have a genuine human conversation with them about how they're doing and what's going on, and be very transparent and say that you've got an amazing opportunity that you'd love to talk to them about, or you want to ask them some questions about something a project that you're starting, or whatever it is. But just start those conversations. You'll be amazed at how effective that is. I think sometimes we bury our head in the methodic strategies and their tactics and all the kind of the funnels and all the things, and we forget that all of that is just to create a space where you can have a conversation with someone. So you can bypass all of that and just have the conversation with someone. Brilliant. But often we're using these systems to just keep generating more and more of those conversations. So who do you know? Who have you got already? I mean, I could tell you, I got a list of about 500 people that I've had calls with. that I could get back in touch with and connect with, right? So have a look through who are the people that you've spoken to already, who are the people that you've met at networking events, who are the people that nearly bought but didn't buy, all of those people, and just start reaching out and start connecting with them. There are obviously, of course, loads of marketing strategies and loads of things that you can do in terms of certain posts that you can create and put out, but we don't have time to go into those. But there are loads of them inside the Rebellious Entrepreneur Academy. So if you're in the academy, just come along to a Q&A, tell us that you're in a client winter, and we'll point you in the direction of what strategies to try and what to do. And then the final one is to get yourself a mentor. Who do you know, personally or professionally, that has been through and survived many a client winter that can just point you in the right direction? I mean, obviously we're here, but one of the people that's been a real mentor to me is my uncle. He's got an online business. He's very successful with it, and he's been able to guide me. In fact, he's probably one of the reasons why Rebellious exists, because when I was affiliate marketing, he was hounding me over and over again. Cordelia, you need to sell your own product. You need to sell your own product. What's your own product? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I will, but I wasn't ready. And eventually I was. And I put part of that down to him pushing me to do that. But who do you know that's got experience in the area that you are trying to get through, that you're trying to succeed in? And ask some questions. Ask them how they did it, or ask them what they would do if they were in your shoes right now. And just, get yourself a mentor. But be careful about how many people you listen to at the same time, because you'll probably get lots of conflicting information. And you got to kind of pick one thread and go with that. But definitely, there are so many people in the Rebellious Business Network that have been where you are right now that can help you get to the next level.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Regardless of, obviously there's a very easy plug for the Rebellious Entrepreneurs Academy. We have got a video being uploaded in the Rebellious Business Network soon, which will tell you everything about what's in the Rebellious Entrepreneurs Academy, which is amazing value. But without plugging that, mentorship is obviously a really easy segue into buy our stuff. However, what I think is an even more important segue and plug is a Rebellious Business Network. We've got a few things. The Rebellious Business Network is an amazing place to find people that will 100% be someone who can do what you're trying to do better than you, who will need some kind of value in return. We've actually got some incentives in the pipeline to try and encourage more of this collaboration. However, regardless, like, you got to market yourself, not just to get clients, but also to move your business forward. Get into the network, put out a post, ask people what you're trying to learn or trying to gain, find some mentorship, find some accountability, find some friends. The biggest thing that I think Cordelia and I will attribute our personal successes to is the fact that we got ourselves into a group of people that were on the same path as us, that were thinking the same as us, and were interested in the same thing as us. And it was like fire. It was magic. It was really amazing. And I'm starting to see the kindlings of that happening in the Rebellious Entrepreneurs Academy, which is amazing in that community. But regardless, you don't need to be a part of a program in order to meet your kindred spirits. So something like the Rebellious Business Network is an amazing place to get started. I would say being inside a program that has the right energy and the right vibe and has a kind of unified goal with unified resources helps create a strong bond. I will say that, and that's not necessarily, that is a plug for Rebellious Entrepreneurs Academy, but it's also a plug for any program that fits you.